The crystal wine glass shattered against the dining room wall, burgundy liquid streaming down our family photos like blood. Get out and never come back. My mother's voice cut through the Thanksgiving air, sharper than the carving knife still gripping in her white knuckles. You're a disgrace to this family, Delilah. All because I wouldn't quit my marketing director job to save her failing boutique. I packed my car while Dad watched from the upstairs window, his silhouette frozen like a ghost. 6 weeks later, 47 missed calls lit up my phone. Dad's voicemail cracked through the speaker. The bank is foreclosing on our house. Why did you stop paying the mortgage? That's when I realized they never knew I'd been paying it for 3 years. The morning sun streamed through my downtown apartment windows as I stared at those 47 missed calls, each one a digital scream I couldn't bring myself to answer. My roommate Madison hummed while scrambling eggs, the normalcy of her morning routine, a stark contrast to the chaos erupting from my phone. You're going to have to deal with them eventually, Madison said, sliding a plate across the kitchen island. It's been 6 weeks since Thanksgiving. 6 weeks since my mother Patricia had destroyed everything with her vicious words and flying wine glass. 6 weeks since I'd driven away from my childhood home, tires crunching on frozen gravel, leaving behind the family I'd been secretly supporting for 3 years. The truth was something I'd never told anyone except Madison. 3 years ago, I'd been visiting home for Sunday dinner when I noticed the foreclosure notice tucked hastily under a pile of mail. My father, Earl, had been laid off from the manufacturing plant where he'd worked for 25 years. Pride kept him from telling me directly, but the dark circles under his eyes and the way he nursed a single beer all evening told the story his words wouldn't. That night, I'd logged into my banking app and set up an automatic transfer. $2,200 every month straight from my checking account to their mortgage company. I told myself it would be temporary just until Dad found another job. But temporary stretched into permanent, and I watched my savings account dwindle while maintaining the lie that everything was fine. 28 years old and I have $600 to my name, I said to Madison, pushing eggs around my plate. I gave up everything for them. My savings, my retirement contributions, even that promotion to the London office. The one that would have doubled your salary? Madison's eyes widened. Delilah, you never told me that part. How could I explain that staying in Denver was the only way to ensure I could handle emergencies at their house, the broken furnace I'd paid to repair, the roof that needed replacing after the hailstorm, the property taxes that somehow never got paid, despite my father supposedly working odd construction jobs? I need to show you something, Madison said, pulling out her phone. I didn't want to upset you before, but you need to see this. She scrolled to a video and suddenly I was back at that Thanksgiving table. Madison had recorded everything on her phone, positioned strategically next to the cranberry sauce. There was my mother standing at the head of the table in her pristine white blouse, building up to her grand announcement. Everyone, I have wonderful news, Patricia's voice rang out from the tiny speaker. Delilah has finally come to her senses. She's leaving that soul-sucking corporate job to become the manager of Bella's boutique. I watched my past self freeze fork halfway to my mouth. Mom, we never discussed this. Of course we did, darling. Last month when you complained about your boss, I told everyone you'd be starting December 1st. Sandra's daughter runs her mother's shop, and look how successful they are. Sandra's daughter is a 45-year-old divorcee with no other options. Past me said carefully, I have a career, a team of 12 people, stock options that vest next year. That's when the transformation happened. My mother's perfectly composed face twisted into something ugly and unfamiliar. Stock options. You'd rather chase imaginary money than help your family. This boutique is my dream. A dream that's lost $40,000 in 8 months, I heard myself say. The wine glass flew so fast the camera barely caught it. Then came the screaming, the accusations that I was selfish, ungrateful, a disappointment. My father sat silent throughout, eyes fixed on his mashed potatoes. My younger brother Tyler didn't even look up from his phone. "Turn it off," I whispered to Madison. "I can't watch anymore." "There's something else," she said gently. "Tyler called while you were in the shower. Not about the house, though. He wants money for some new gaming equipment." I laughed, but it came out bitter. "Of course he does. 26 years old, living in their basement, making maybe $200 a month from streaming to his 12 followers, and he wants money for gaming equipment." My phone buzzed again. This time it was Tyler's text. "Heard Mom told everyone you're in rehab for stealing from the company. Pretty messed up even for you. Anyway, can you Venmo me $2,000 new streaming rig would really help my channel take off." The casual cruelty of it hit me like a physical blow. My own mother was telling people I was a drug addict who stole money, all to explain why I hadn't shown my face in 6 weeks. Meanwhile, she had no idea her house was still standing because of the money I'd been hemorrhaging every month. "I need help," I said to Madison. "Professional help, financial forensics kind of help." "Actually," Madison smiled, "I might know someone. Remember Rachel from my book club, the one who caught her ex hiding assets during their divorce? She's a forensic accountant and she owes me a favor." 2 hours later, I sat across from Rachel Chen in her pristine office, laying out 3 years of bank statements. Her expression grew more concerned with each page she examined. "Delilah, you've transferred over $79,000 to your parents," she said, fingers flying across her calculator, "plus another $15,000 in emergency repairs and payments. You've essentially funded their entire lifestyle while living on ramen and anxiety." "I know it looks bad written down like that," I started. "It looks like financial abuse," Rachel interrupted. "But that's not the interesting part. Your mother's boutique shows some very unusual patterns. Large cash deposits followed by immediate withdrawals. Inventory purchases that don't match sales records. This isn't just a failing business. This is something else entirely." "What do you mean?" Rachel pulled up a business registry on her computer. "Bella's boutique has a silent partner, your Aunt Bethany. And there's a secondary business account that your mother's been funneling money into. It's registered as an investment fund, but the activity suggests it's more like a personal savings account she's hiding from your father." My stomach dropped. "She's planning something." "She's been planning something for at least 2 years, Rachel confirmed. "This boutique, it's designed to fail. Every loss is a tax write-off. Meanwhile, she's stockpiling cash in accounts your father doesn't know exist. Classic asset hiding before a divorce." I thought about my father's defeated posture at Thanksgiving, the way he'd shrunk into himself as my mother raged. How long had he been living with someone who was actively planning to destroy him? "There's more," Rachel said quietly. "The mortgage your parents have, it's been flagged for suspicious activity. Someone's been trying to manipulate a foreclosure. I'll need to dig deeper, but this doesn't look like simple financial distress. This looks orchestrated." As I left Rachel's office, my phone buzzed with another text from my father. "Delilah, please. The bank says we have 10 days. Your mother is beside herself. We need to talk about the mortgage situation. Can you help us understand what happened?" What happened? I'd been played, manipulated, used as a human ATM while my mother crafted elaborate lies about who I was. But now, armed with knowledge about her schemes, I finally had power. I typed back, "I'll explain everything, but first you need to know what Mom's been hiding from you." The secret burden I'd carried for 3 years was about to become a weapon. My mother wanted me gone, fine. But she was about to learn exactly what happened when you bit the hand that fed you. The offices of Steinberg Financial Advisors felt like a confessional booth as I sat across from my advisor Martin, watching his expression shift from professional concern to genuine alarm. The numbers on his screen told a story I'd been too afraid to calculate myself. Delilah, according to these records, you've been living on approximately $800 a month after the mortgage payments. Martin said, removing his glasses to clean them, a nervous habit I'd noticed over our 5-year professional relationship. That's below poverty level in Denver. How have you been surviving? Ramen mostly, I admitted. Madison covers more than her share of groceries. I sell plasma twice a week. Sometimes I do freelance marketing work at night, but that money usually goes to their emergency repairs. This needs to stop immediately. Martin's voice carried an edge of anger I'd never heard before. You're 28 years old with a 6-figure salary and you're selling blood to eat. Your parents are committing financial abuse whether they know about your payments or not. The weight of those words settled into my bones. I pulled out my phone to show him the spreadsheet I'd been maintaining, each entry a small sacrifice that had seemed reasonable at the time. Flights canceled. Conferences skipped. Dental work postponed because I couldn't afford the copay after making their mortgage payment. Look at this. I scrolled through 3 years of entries. I missed my best friend Jennifer's wedding in Hawaii because that month they needed a new water heater. I spent my 26th birthday alone because traveling home for Dad's surgery wiped out my vacation fund. I've been living a half-life and they don't even know it. Or they do know and don't care, Martin suggested gently. Have you considered that possibility? Before I could respond, my phone lit up with an incoming call. Tyler. Against my better judgment, I answered. Finally. Tyler's voice boomed through the speaker. I've been trying to reach you all morning. Look, I need that $2,000 by Friday. There's a tournament coming up and my current setup is trash. You know how important my streaming career is. Tyler, I'm in a meeting, I said, noting Martin's raised eyebrows. Whatever. Just send the money. Oh, and just so you know, Mom's been telling everyone at church about your drug problem. Pastor Williams wants to do an intervention. She gave him your address. My drug problem? I couldn't keep the disbelief out of my voice. Tyler, you know that's a complete lie. Yeah, but what was she supposed to say, that you abandoned the family? At least the drug story makes you sympathetic. Anyway, $2,000 Friday. Later. The line went dead. Martin stared at me with something between pity and horror. Your mother is telling people you're a drug addict. Apparently. It explains my absence and makes her the suffering mother. 2 birds, 1 stone. I laughed bitterly. The irony is I couldn't afford drugs if I wanted them. We need to implement a financial triage immediately, Martin said, switching back to professional mode. Cut off all payments to your parents, rebuild your emergency fund, and possibly consider legal action to recover some of the money. I can't just let them lose the house, I protested weakly. Why not? They're adults who made choices. Your father could have found work in 3 years. Your mother could have closed the boutique. Your brother could get a real job. Instead, they've all been content to let you drown while they floated. His words stung because they were true. I thought about all the small moments that should have been red flags. Dad mentioning he was thinking about starting a consulting business but never following through. Mom buying designer bags while complaining about the cost of groceries. Tyler upgrading his gaming setup twice a year while contributing nothing to household expenses. My phone buzzed with a text from Rachel. Can you meet me at Bethany's yoga studio in an hour? I've found something huge. The Flowing Peace Yoga Studio occupied the ground floor of an upscale building in Cherry Creek. Aunt Bethany had owned it for 10 years, building a devoted following among Denver's wealthy suburban women. I found her in the back office, surrounded by crystals and the overwhelming scent of patchouli. Delilah. She stood to embrace me, her collection of bangles chiming like wind chimes. I heard about Thanksgiving. Patricia can be intense. That's one way to put it. I said, noting Rachel already seated in the corner with her laptop open. Bethany's face went through a series of expressions as Rachel laid out the financial evidence. The color drained from her artificially tanned skin when she saw her name on the boutique's documents. "I need you to understand something," Bethany said finally, twisting her rings nervously. "Your mother approached me 2 years ago with this plan. She said Earl was becoming unstable, drinking heavily, and she needed to protect assets for when she left him." "Dad doesn't drink heavily," I protested. "He has a beer occasionally." "I know that now, but Patricia was convincing. She said she'd caught him gambling away their savings, that he'd been fired for drinking on the job, that she was terrified of being left with nothing." Bethany's voice dropped. "She asked me to help hide money from him, said it was for protection." Rachel pulled up more documents. "But it goes deeper than that. Patricia hasn't just been hiding assets. She's been systematically destroying Earl's reputation. Calls to his former employer suggesting he had substance abuse issues. Anonymous reports to construction sites where he applied claiming safety concerns. She's been sabotaging his job search for 2 years. The room spun. My mother hadn't just been planning to leave my father, she'd been actively destroying his ability to support himself when she did. "There's more," Bethany said quietly. "She's been having an affair with Robert Hutchinson." The name hit me like a punch. Robert Hutchinson, Dad's best friend from college. They'd been in each other's weddings, celebrated promotions together, shared season tickets to the Broncos for 15 years. "How long?" I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted the answer. "At least a year, maybe longer. They meet here sometimes after my evening classes. I thought it was innocent at first, just old friends catching up. But last month..." Bethany pulled out her phone, showing me security footage. My mother and Robert in an embrace that was definitely not platonic. "We need to talk to Dad," I said, standing up. "He needs to know everything." The Denver diner hadn't changed in 20 years. Same cracked vinyl booths, same coffee-stained menus, same waitress named Dolores, who'd been serving the Tuesday meatloaf special since before I was born. I found my father in the back corner booth, looking smaller than I'd ever seen him. "Hi, sweetheart," he said, attempting a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Thanks for meeting me." I slid into the booth across from him, noting the 3 empty coffee cups already on the table. His hand shook slightly as he reached for his water glass. "Dad, we need to talk about what's really going on." "I know about the mortgage," he said quickly. "I found the bank statements in your mother's desk. 3 years, Delilah. You've been paying our mortgage for 3 years while I sat around feeling sorry for myself." "Dad." "No, let me finish. I'm a failure. As a husband, as a father, as a provider. Your mother's right about me. I'm worthless." "She's been sabotaging your job applications," I said bluntly. "Every construction site you applied to, every company that might have hired you, she called them. Reported false safety concerns, suggested you had substance abuse issues. She's the reason you couldn't find work." His face went through several expressions before settling on disbelief. "That's not possible. Patricia wouldn't..." "She pushed me to apply for those jobs. She printed out the applications. So she'd know exactly where to call," Rachel said, sliding into the booth beside me with her folder of evidence. "Mr. Morrison, I'm a forensic accountant. Your daughter hired me to investigate some financial irregularities. What I found goes far beyond simple marital discord." Dad listened in silence as Rachel laid out the evidence. Hidden accounts sabotaged employment, systematic reputation destruction. With each revelation, he seemed to shrink further into the booth. "And Robert?" he asked, finally, voice barely above a whisper. "I'm sorry, Dad. At least a year." He nodded slowly, like he'd suspected but needed confirmation. "I knew. Part of me knew. The way she'd light up when he called. the sudden yoga classes that corresponded with his business trips ending. I convinced myself I was being paranoid. "This isn't your fault," I said, reaching across to take his hand. "She's been planning this for years, but we can fight back. We can expose what she's doing." "Fight back?" He laughed bitterly. "With what, I'm a 55-year-old man with a 3-year employment gap and a reputation she's thoroughly destroyed. She's taken everything from me." "Not everything," I said firmly. "You still have me, and we're going to make this right." Just then, my phone exploded with notifications. Patricia had called a family meeting via group text. "Emergency family meeting tonight at 7. We need to discuss Delilah's responsibilities to this family and our housing situation. Robert will be joining us as our financial advisor." The audacity of it made my blood boil. She was really going to parade her affair partner as our financial advisor while demanding I continue funding their lifestyle. "Dad," I said, watching him read the same message, "are you ready to fight back?" For the first time in 3 years, I saw a spark of the man who'd taught me to ride a bike, who'd cheered at every soccer game, who'd walked me down the aisle at my college graduation when I'd asked him to share the honor with Mom. "Yes," he said simply. "I'm ready." The family meeting was set for 7, but I had other plans first. At 4 o'clock, I stood outside Bethany's yoga studio again this time to confront her with harder questions. She was finishing a hot yoga class, her carefully maintained composure starting to crack as her students filed out. "We need to talk about the full scope of Patricia's plan," I said, following her into her office. "And I need you to tell me everything, not just the parts that make you look less complicit." Bethany collapsed into her desk chair, suddenly looking older than her 48 years. "You have to understand, Patricia is my younger sister. I've always looked out for her even when she made questionable choices, like destroying her husband's life. She convinced me he was the problem." Bethany's voice cracked. "She showed me bar receipts, told me about him stumbling home drunk, crying about gambling debts. I believed her because it was easier than believing my sister was a monster." "But you knew about the affair with Robert." "That came later. By then I was already in too deep with the business arrangements. She said Earl had driven her to it with his neglect and failures." Bethany pulled out a bottle of wine from her desk drawer, pouring generous amounts into 2 glasses. "But last month something changed. She got cocky, started talking about her endgame." I leaned forward. "What endgame?" "The house. She and Robert have been planning to force a foreclosure. Robert's development company, Hutchinson Holdings, would buy it at auction for pennies on the dollar. They'd flip it for 3 times the value and split the profits. Your mortgage payments were the only thing preventing their plan from working." The wine glass nearly slipped from my hand. "She knew about my payments." "Not at first, but about 6 months ago she figured it out. Some bank teller she knows from church mentioned seeing regular transfers from your account. Patricia was furious initially, then she realized she could use it." "Use it how?" "Think about it, Delilah. You pay the mortgage faithfully for 3 years, establishing a clear pattern. Then suddenly you stop. The house goes into foreclosure, and who's to blame? The bitter daughter who abandoned her family. Meanwhile, Patricia plays the victim, gets the insurance money from the boutique's failure, keeps the hidden assets and profits from the house sale with Robert." My phone buzzed. A text from Dad. "Robert just pulled into our driveway. He's early." "I have to go," I said, standing. "But Bethany, I need you to do the right thing. When this all comes out, and it will, you need to tell the truth." She nodded, tears streaming down her perfectly made-up face. "I will. I promise. Your mother. She's not the person I thought I knew." The drive to my parents' house took 20 minutes, but it felt like hours. Every mile brought back memories. The street where I'd learned to ride my bike. The park where Dad had taught me to throw a curveball. The elementary school where Mom had been room mother back when she still cared more about her children than her image. I parked behind Robert's BMW, noting the vanity plate, Hutch 1. Even his license plate was obnoxious. Through the living room window, I could see him sitting in Dad's chair, my father relegated to the couch like a guest in his own home. The front door was unlocked. I walked in to find Tyler sprawled on the love seat playing some game on his phone while Patricia held court in the center of the room. She'd dressed for the occasion in a silk blouse and pearls, looking every inch the wronged matriarch. "Finally," she said, not bothering with a greeting, "we need to discuss your responsibilities to this family." "Hello to you too, Mom." I took a seat next to Dad, who gave my hand a subtle squeeze. Robert cleared his throat importantly. "Delilah, as the family's financial advisor, I need to express my concern about your recent behavior." "Since when are you our financial advisor?" I asked. "Last I checked, you were Dad's friend. Or is that relationship as fake as your concern?" "Don't be dramatic," Patricia interjected. "Robert has graciously offered to help us navigate this crisis you've created." "The crisis I've created?" I laughed. "Please elaborate." Patricia stood pacing like a prosecutor presenting her case. "You've been paying our mortgage for 3 years without telling us, creating a dependency. Then after one small disagreement, you disappear and cut us off without warning. The house is in foreclosure because of your vindictive behavior. One small disagreement, you threw a wine glass at my head and told me I was a disgrace to the family. I was emotional. You know how stressed I've been with the boutique. The boutique that's designed to fail so you can claim the losses on taxes while funneling money into hidden accounts with Bethany." The room went silent. Patricia's face cycled through several expressions before settling on indignant denial. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Really? So you don't have an investment account with Bethany holding approximately $60,000? You haven't been telling people I'm a drug addict to explain my absence. You haven't been sabotaging Dad's job applications for 2 years. Robert stood abruptly. "I think we should all calm down. These accusations are clearly the result of Delilah's emotional state." "Sit down, Robert," Dad said quietly. It was the first time he'd spoken, and something in his voice made Robert comply immediately. "I want to hear what my daughter has to say." I pulled out my phone, showing them screenshots of the evidence Rachel had compiled. "Mom has been planning to divorce you, Dad. She's been hiding assets, destroying your reputation, and setting you up to be left with nothing. And Robert here has been helping her, planning to buy our house cheap when it forecloses." "That's ridiculous," Patricia said, but her voice wavered. "Is it then? Explain why Hutchinson Holdings has been pre-approved for exactly the amount our house would sell for at a foreclosure auction. Explain why you've been meeting Robert at Bethany's yoga studio after hours. Explain why you told Dad's last potential employer that he had a drinking problem." Tyler finally looked up from his phone. "Wait, what, Mom? Is this true?" "Of course not. Your sister is having some kind of breakdown. This is what happens when children get too successful too young. They think they know everything." "I know you've been stealing from your own boutique to claim insurance fraud," I continued. "I know you convinced Tyler to fake a disability for government benefits. I know you've been planning this for 2 years, and the only thing that stopped you was my mortgage payments." Robert's face had gone pale. "Patricia, tell them this isn't true." "Of course it isn't true." She was shouting now. "How dare you come into my home and make these accusations after everything I've done for you?" "Everything you've done for me?" I stood, matching her energy. "You mean like telling everyone I'm a drug addict, like demanding I give up my career to work for free at your failing business, like treating me as a personal ATM while planning to destroy Dad." "You ungrateful little—" "Stop!" Dad's voice cut through her building tirade. He stood slowly, seeming to grow taller with each inch. "Patricia, I've sat here quietly for 3 years believing I was the problem, believing I'd failed you. But it was all you, wasn't it? Earl, don't listen to her poison. I smelled your perfume on Robert's jacket 6 months ago, he continued. I saw the boutique's books accidentally left open on your laptop. I noticed you always had yoga when he was in town. I knew Patricia. I just loved you too much to admit it. The room was electric with tension. Tyler had put down his phone, completely staring at our parents like he was seeing them for the first time. And you? Dad turned to Robert. 30 years of friendship. You were my best man. I held your son when he was born. And this is what you do. Robert couldn't meet his eyes. Earl, it's not what you think. Get out of my house. Dad's voice was calm, which made it more terrifying. Now. Robert scrambled for the door, pausing only to look at Patricia. Call me later, he muttered before fleeing. How dare you? Patricia rounded on Dad. This is my house too. The house you were planning to let foreclose? I asked. The house I've been paying for while you plotted with your boyfriend. I want you out, she pointed at me. You're no longer welcome here. Fine. I stood. Dad, Tyler, you're welcome at my apartment anytime. Mom, you should know that everything we've discussed tonight has been documented. The forensic accountant I hired has already forwarded her findings to the appropriate authorities. Have fun explaining insurance fraud and benefit fraud to the investigators. As I headed for the door, Tyler suddenly spoke up. Wait, Mom, did you really tell me to fake being disabled? Patricia's silence was answer enough. Oh my God, Tyler said slowly. I could go to jail. You said it was just paperwork that everyone did it. I could go to jail because of you. Tyler, baby, I was trying to help. No, he said, standing. No, you were using me, just like you used Dad and Delilah. I may be a screw-up, but I'm not going to prison for you. He followed me to the door, and after a moment's hesitation, so did Dad. Earl Morrison, if you walk out that door... Patricia's threat hung unfinished as all three of us left. We stood in the driveway, 3 refugees from Patricia's war, unsure what came next. I know a good lawyer, I said finally. Uncle Marcus. Dad, remember your brother who handled that corporate merger case? Dad nodded slowly. I haven't talked to Marcus in years. Patricia always said he was too judgmental. Translation, he saw through her bullshit, Tyler muttered. Language, Dad said automatically, then smiled slightly. But you're not wrong. The revelations were out, the masks were off, and the real fight was about to begin. My apartment had never hosted this many people at once. Dad occupied the couch, still processing everything. Tyler sat cross-legged on the floor, laptop open, frantically researching disability fraud penalties. Madison worked in the kitchen making coffee and sandwiches like a combination therapist and caterer. But the real surprise was Uncle Marcus, who'd driven straight from Colorado Springs the moment I called. Little D, Marcus said, using my childhood nickname as he reviewed the documents spread across my dining table. This is extensive. Your mother didn't just plan a divorce. She orchestrated a complete financial and personal annihilation campaign. Marcus Morrison was everything my father wasn't tall, where Dad was average aggressive, where Dad was passive successful, where Dad had struggled. The brothers had been close until Patricia systematically drove a wedge between them, claiming Marcus looked down on their simpler lifestyle. Can you help? I asked. Help, I've been waiting 15 years for Earl to finally see Patricia for what she is. No offense, brother. Dad waved weakly from the couch. None taken. I was an idiot. You were in love? Marcus corrected. She's a master manipulator, but now we fight back. First order of business emergency injunctions. Can we really freeze her accounts? Tyler asked, looking up from his laptop. Even the hidden ones. With evidence of fraud, absolutely. Rachel's forensic work is impeccable, but we need to move fast. Patricia's not stupid. She'll start moving money the moment she realizes we're serious. Rachel arrived an hour later with reinforcements: a court reporter named Janet and a process server named Derek who looked like he could bench press a small car. "I've been tracking the accounts all day," Rachel announced, setting up her laptop. "Patricia tried to transfer $40,000 from the Bethany account 20 minutes ago. The bank flagged it for suspicious activity thanks to my earlier call." "She's panicking," Marcus said with satisfaction. "Good. Panicked people make mistakes. Now let's discuss strategy." We worked through the night, fueled by coffee and righteous anger. Marcus filed emergency injunctions, electronically freezing not just the hidden accounts, but also the boutique's assets. Rachel compiled a comprehensive financial report that would make any prosecutor salivate. Tyler surprisingly proved invaluable by creating a digital timeline of Patricia's lies using her own social media posts. "Look at this." Tyler showed us his laptop screen. She posted about Dad's drinking problem in a private Facebook group for small business owners, 17 times over 2 years. But here's the thing, I cross-referenced with Dad's actual whereabouts. Half these supposed incidents he was with me at gaming tournaments. "You kept records of when Dad visited?" I asked, surprised. Tyler shrugged, looking embarrassed. "He's the only one who ever showed up to support me. Even if he didn't understand gaming, he tried. I guess I wanted to remember that." Dad's eyes misted over. He pulled Tyler into a hug that seemed to surprise them both. "Hate to interrupt the moment," Madison said, looking at her phone, "but Patricia's having a meltdown on social media. She's going live on Facebook." We crowded around Madison's phone, watching my mother's tear-streaked face fill the screen. "My family has abandoned me," Patricia wailed to her audience of church friends and boutique customers. "My daughter, who I loved and supported, has turned my husband and son against me with vicious lies. She's always been jealous of my success, my boutique, my marriage. Now she's trying to destroy me." The comments were mixed. Some offered prayers and support. Others seemed skeptical, especially when Patricia couldn't quite keep her story straight about why I'd left. "Is she really claiming you're jealous of her failed boutique?" Rachel laughed. "The one hemorrhaging money—" "Wait," Tyler said, fingers flying across his keyboard. "I have an idea. Mom taught me about social media manipulation for my streaming. Time to use her own tactics against her." Within minutes, Tyler had created a TikTok video. Nothing fancy, just him sitting in my living room speaking directly to the camera. "Hey, Internet. I'm Tyler Morrison. You might have seen my mom's video about our family crisis. I want to tell you the truth. My sister Delilah has been secretly paying our mortgage for 3 years, while my mom told everyone she was a drug addict. My mom convinced me to commit disability fraud. She's been having an affair with my dad's best friend, and she's been planning to steal everything from my father in a divorce. I'm 26 years old, and I'm done being manipulated. If you've been hurt by someone like my mom, you're not alone. Stand up, speak out, stop the cycle." He posted it before anyone could stop him. Within an hour, it had 10,000 views. By morning, it would go viral. "Tyler," I said, stunned. "That was incredibly brave." "I'm tired of being a disappointment," he said quietly. "Maybe it's time I started being the son Dad deserves." The next phase of our plan involved Madison's particular skills. As a social media manager for several major brands, she understood the power of narrative control. "Patricia's been crafting her victim story for years," Madison explained. "We need to flip the script, but carefully. Too aggressive and we look vindictive. Too passive and she controls the narrative." She created a simple website, truthaboutpatricia.com. Not mean-spirited, just facts. Bank records showing my mortgage payments, screenshots of Patricia's posts about Dad's fictional drinking problem, the boutique's financial records showing systematic loss creation. "We're not attacking," Madison emphasized. "We're illuminating. Let the facts speak." Meanwhile, Marcus worked on the legal front. The emergency injunctions were granted at 6 a.m. by a judge who'd been awakened by the urgent filing, but agreed the evidence warranted immediate action. Patricia can't touch any of the hidden money, Marcus announced. The boutique is frozen, and I've filed papers forcing an immediate financial accounting of all marital assets. What about the criminal charges? Rachel asked. Insurance fraud, benefit fraud, defamation. One step at a time. First, we protect Earl's interests. Then we let prosecutors decide what charges to pursue. Dad had been quiet through most of this processing everything. Finally, he spoke up. I want to add something to that website, he said. A statement from me. We gathered around as he dictated. My name is Earl Morrison. For 3 years, I believed I was a failure as a husband and provider. I now know my wife Patricia systematically sabotaged my employment opportunities while conducting an affair with my best friend. My daughter Delilah saved our home with her own money while Patricia told people she was a drug addict. My son Tyler was manipulated into committing fraud. I take responsibility for my weakness in not seeing the truth sooner. But I will not let Patricia Morrison destroy our children to satisfy her greed. The truth is now public. Let justice follow. Dad, I said throat tight, you're not weak. You're one of the strongest people I know. I lost myself for a while, he admitted, but I'm finding my way back. The counterattack was working better than we'd planned. Patricia's Facebook Live had backfired spectacularly when viewers started fact-checking her claims. The boutique's customers began sharing their own stories of bounced checks and unfulfilled orders. Former employees commented about unpaid wages. But the real breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Robert Hutchinson's wife Andrea called my cell phone at 8 a.m. Is this Delilah Morrison? Her voice was cold-controlled. Yes. I'm Andrea Hutchinson. I believe you know my husband Robert. I'd like to meet. I have information that might interest you. We met at a coffee shop downtown. Andrea Hutchinson looked like what Patricia always aspired to be, genuinely wealthy, effortlessly elegant, actually successful. She also looked absolutely furious. I've suspected the affair for months, she said without preamble. But I needed proof. Your brother's video provided that. I've had a private investigator following Robert for 6 weeks. She slid a manila envelope across the table. Inside were photos, credit card records, hotel receipts. There's more, Andrea continued. Robert and your mother weren't just planning to buy your house. They've done this before. 3 other families' similar schemes. Find distressed properties, create worse distress. Buy cheap through Robert's company. Your mother was his latest partner, but not his first. My hands shook as I reviewed the evidence. Why are you telling me this? Because I'm done being the silent wife. Robert thinks I don't know about the offshore accounts, the hidden assets, the side businesses. He's wrong. I know everything, including the fact that he's been using Hutchinson Holdings for money laundering. Money laundering. Construction is a cash business. Easy to inflate invoices, create phantom workers, wash dirty money through legitimate projects. I have documents going back 10 years. This is huge. The FBI would want this. Andrea smiled coldly. They already have it. I met with them last week. But I thought you should know that your mother partnered with a criminal. It might help your father in the divorce. As I left the meeting, my phone rang. Patricia. You've ruined everything, she screamed. The accounts are frozen. The boutique is locked. You vindictive little witch. Hi, Mom. Having a rough morning? This isn't over. You think you've won, I'll destroy all of you. Starting with your precious father. Everyone will know what a pathetic failure he is. Actually, Mom, everyone's going to know what you are. A liar, a thief, and a fraud. Oh, and by the way, Robert's wife just gave me evidence that your boyfriend is a money launderer. Have fun explaining that to the FBI. The silence on the other end was deafening. Then quietly she said, You were always too smart for your own good. No, Mom. I was just smart enough to finally see through you. She hung up. It would be the last time we spoke for months. That evening we regrouped at my apartment. The counterattack had been more successful than we dared hope. Patricia's reputation was in ruins. Her assets were frozen. Her boyfriend was under federal investigation. Her victims were speaking out. But Tyler surprised us all with the biggest victory. I called the disability office, he announced. Told them everything. They're waiving criminal charges if I pay back the money and cooperate with their investigation into Mom. Tyler, that's amazing, I said. How do you feel? Free, he said simply. For the first time in my life, I feel free. Dad raised his coffee mug. To freedom and to family. The real kind. We toasted a ragtag army that had won its first battle, but we all knew the war wasn't over. Patricia Morrison didn't go down without a fight. The real fireworks were yet to come. The call from Channel 9 News came 3 days after Tyler's TikTok went viral. The video had reached 2 million views, spawning thousands of response videos from people sharing their own toxic parent stories. The hashtag was trending, and somehow I'd become the reluctant face of a movement. Ms. Morrison, this is Sarah Chen from 9 News, the reporter said. We'd like to interview you about your story. It's resonating with so many people in our community. I hesitated, phone pressed to my ear as I watched Madison edit another batch of evidence for our website. I'm not sure I want that kind of attention. I understand your reluctance, Sarah continued. But your mother is scheduled to appear on our competitor's morning show tomorrow. She's claiming she's the victim of a smear campaign orchestrated by a mentally unstable daughter. Of course she was. Patricia never met a narrative she couldn't try to control. Fine, I said. When do you want to meet? The interview was scheduled for that evening, giving me just enough time to panic, calm down, and panic again. Madison helped me prepare, running through potential questions, while Tyler documented everything for what he was calling the family files, his comprehensive digital record of Patricia's lies. Remember, Madison coached, stick to facts. Let the evidence speak. Don't get emotional even when they ask about the painful stuff. The news studio was smaller than it looked on TV, all harsh lights and cables snaking across the floor. Sarah Chen was younger than she sounded on the phone, with kind eyes and a notebook full of carefully researched questions. Just be yourself, she said as they fitted me with a microphone. Tell your truth. The interview started gently. Sarah asked about my career, establishing me as a credible professional. Then she moved into the meat of the story. Delilah, you paid your parents' mortgage for 3 years without their knowledge. Why, I discovered they were facing foreclosure. My father had lost his job, and I couldn't stand the thought of them losing their home. I thought it would be temporary. But it wasn't. No. What I didn't know was that my mother was actively sabotaging my father's job search. Every time he applied somewhere, she'd call with false concerns about his reliability. Sarah's expression remained neutral, but I caught the flash of anger in her eyes. You have proof of this. Extensive documentation. Phone records, emails, even recordings from 2 companies who kept notes about the suspicious calls. The interview continued for 30 minutes. I presented bank statements, showed Patricia's social media posts claiming I was a drug addict, explained the boutique's fraudulent structure. Through it all, I kept Madison's advice in mind, facts, not feelings. Your mother says you're doing this out of jealousy. How do you respond? I'm doing this because the truth matters. For 3 years, I lived on poverty wages while maintaining their lifestyle. I missed important life events, postponed medical care, sold plasma to eat. Meanwhile, my mother was hiding assets and planning to profit from a foreclosure I was preventing. This isn't about jealousy, it's about justice. The interview aired that night at 6. By 7, my phone was exploding with calls and texts. Former employees of Patricia's boutique reached out with their own horror stories. Relatives I hadn't heard from in years expressed shock and support. 3 of Dad's former co-workers called to say they'd suspected something was off about his firing. But the most important call came from prosecutor Alexandra Morgan. "Ms. Morrison, I've been assigned to investigate the fraud allegations surrounding your mother's business. Your interview combined with the evidence on your website has given us significant leads. We'd like to meet." The next morning, Patricia appeared on Channel 7's Morning Coffee with Monica. I watched from my apartment surrounded by Dad, Tyler, Madison, and Marcus. Rachel was at the prosecutor's office providing financial records. Patricia had dressed carefully for her performance, a modest gray dress, minimal makeup, pearl earrings that screamed, "Respectable mother wronged by ungrateful child." She'd even styled her hair in a softer way, making her look vulnerable and maternal. "Patricia, this must be so difficult for you," Monica Waterstone cooed sympathetically. "It's been devastating," Patricia said, dabbing at dry eyes with a tissue. "To have your own daughter turn on you like this, spreading lies and manipulating her father and brother. I failed somewhere as a mother." "Oh, here we go," Tyler muttered. "The victim performance." Patricia continued her sob story, painting me as a troubled child who'd always resented her success. According to her version, I was jealous of the boutique, angry about her close relationship with Robert, whom she described as merely a family financial advisor and mentally unstable from work stress. "I'm worried about Delilah," she said, manufacturing a tremor in her voice. "She needs help, not encouragement for these delusions." That's when Monica surprised everyone. "Mrs. Morrison, our investigative team has been looking into your claims. Can you explain why your boutique shows losses of $300,000 over 18 months while you personally deposited $40,000 into a hidden account?" Patricia's mask slipped for just a second before she recovered. "I don't know what you're talking about. My finances are perfectly legitimate." "What about this disability claim filed for your son, Tyler? His signature appears to be forged." The interview spiraled from there. Monica had done her homework, hitting Patricia with fact after fact. By the end, Patricia was no longer playing the victim. She was barely coherent, alternating between denial and threats of lawsuits. "That was beautiful," Madison said, actually wiping away a tear. "Monica Waterstone just became my hero." The public response was swift and brutal. The boutique's Yelp page filled with 1-star reviews. Patricia's church issued a statement distancing themselves from her. The country club revoked her membership pending investigation of unpaid dues. But the real damage came from former victims finding their voice. Robert Hutchinson's previous real estate partners came forward with their own stories of manipulation and loss. 3 other families revealed similar schemes where Patricia had inserted herself as a helpful friend before attempting to profit from their misfortune. "She approached me after my husband's death," one widow told Channel 9 in a follow-up segment. "Said she wanted to help manage the estate. Thank God my son is a lawyer and saw through her." The investigation moved quickly after that. Prosecutor Morgan built an airtight case using our evidence and the testimony of multiple victims. Within 2 weeks, Patricia was formally charged with wire fraud, insurance fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy. The arrest happened on a Tuesday morning. I wasn't there, but Tyler was having staked out the house with his camera. His footage showed Patricia being led away in handcuffs, still protesting her innocence, still claiming she was the victim of a conspiracy. "You have to feel a little sorry for her," Dad said, watching the news coverage that evening. "Do we, though?" Tyler asked. "She destroyed your life, almost destroyed Delilah's, and tried to make me a criminal. Where's the sympathy in that?" "She's still your mother," Dad said quietly. "And she's still the woman I married 29 years ago, even if that person got lost somewhere along the way." The next few weeks were a whirlwind of legal proceedings, media requests, and unexpected support. A GoFundMe started by Tyler's gaming community raised $30,000 to help Dad get back on his feet. My company, which had been following the story, offered me the Beijing promotion again, this time with a signing bonus that would help Dad keep the house. Robert Hutchinson was arrested by the FBI on money laundering charges. Andrea Hutchinson filed for divorce and announced she was donating her settlement to organizations fighting financial abuse. Tyler enrolled in community college studying digital forensics. "Turns out I'm good at investigating things," he said. "Who knew?" Dad started seeing a therapist and joined a support group for emotional abuse survivors. Slowly, he began rebuilding his confidence and reputation. 3 of his former colleagues reached out with consulting opportunities. The boutique was liquidated to pay back creditors and victims. The hidden accounts were frozen pending the trial. Patricia's carefully constructed life collapsed entirely. Throughout it all, the public support was overwhelming. My inbox filled with stories from people who'd experienced similar betrayals. Support groups invited me to speak. Publishers reached out about book deals. "You've started something," Madison said one evening as we sorted through messages. "People needed to see that it's okay to stand up to toxic family members." "I didn't mean to start anything," I replied. "I just wanted the truth out there." Sometimes that's all it takes. The preliminary hearing was set for 6 weeks after the arrest. Patricia remained in custody, unable to make bail after the judge deemed her a flight risk. Her attorney, a public defender named Craig Walsh, seemed competent but overwhelmed by the mounting evidence. As the hearing approached, I received a letter from Patricia. I recognized her handwriting immediately, the same elegant script that had signed my birthday cards and permission slips. But I couldn't bring myself to open it, not yet. Some wounds were still too fresh. "When you're ready," Dad said, seeing me hold the unopened envelope. "Or never. Your choice." The public reckoning was complete. Patricia Morrison, the woman who'd crafted such a perfect facade, was exposed for what she truly was. The question now was whether she'd show any remorse at trial. Somehow I doubted it. The courtroom smelled of old wood and industrial cleaner, a combination that would forever remind me of the day I faced my mother for the last time. 6 months had passed since her arrest, and Patricia Morrison looked nothing like the polished woman who'd terrorized our family. Her hair, once perfectly styled, hung limp and gray at the roots. The designer clothes had been replaced with a plain black suit that hung loose on her diminished frame. But her eyes, those calculating eyes that could shift from maternal warmth to Arctic coldness in seconds, they remained unchanged. "All rise," the bailiff announced. "The Honorable Judge Catherine Blackwood presiding." Judge Blackwood was known for her no-nonsense approach to white-collar crime. As she took her seat, her sharp gaze swept the courtroom, taking in the prosecutor's defense table and packed gallery. Local media had turned Patricia's trial into a sensation. The suburban mother who'd lived a double life, the family betrayal, the viral video that started it all. It was irresistible drama. "We're here for the trial of Patricia Morrison on multiple counts of fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy," Judge Blackwood announced. "Is the prosecution ready?" Alexandra Morgan stood impeccable in navy blue. "We are, Your Honor." "Defense." Craig Walsh, Patricia's beleaguered public defender, nodded wearily. "Yes, Your Honor." The first day was devoted to opening statements and financial evidence. Rachel took the stand, walking the jury through 3 years of hidden accounts, fraudulent insurance claims, and manufactured losses. Her testimony was devastating in its precision. Mrs. Morrison created a systematic scheme to hide marital assets while deliberately impoverishing her family. Rachel explained, pointing to charts showing fund transfers. She relied on her daughter's payments to maintain the facade while stockpiling money for her exit strategy. Patricia sat rigid throughout, occasionally whispering to her attorney. She'd tried to make eye contact with me several times, but I kept my gaze fixed on the witness stand. Day 2 brought former employees of the boutique. One by one, they testified about bounced paychecks, false promises, and Patricia's increasingly erratic behavior. She told me the register was short and accused me of theft, one young woman testified. Made me empty my purse in front of customers. Later, I found out she'd taken the money herself for insurance fraud purposes. The third day was when everything shifted. Robert Hutchinson, looking haggard in federal custody orange, took the stand as part of his plea deal. "State your relationship to the defendant," Prosecutor Morgan instructed. "We were involved romantically and business partners." "For how long?" 18 months romantically, 2 years for the business arrangement. Robert's testimony laid bare the entire scheme. How Patricia had approached him with the foreclosure plan. How they'd identified 3 other families to target after successfully flipping those properties. How she'd laughed about her pathetic husband and ATM daughter. She said Delilah was so desperate for Mommy's approval she'd never stop paying. Robert testified, his voice hollow. Said we could milk it for years before pulling the trigger on the foreclosure. I felt Dad's hand grip mine as Tyler made a low sound of disgust. Did Mrs. Morrison know her daughter was living in poverty to make these payments? She knew. She found it amusing, said it built character. The courtroom erupted in murmurs. Judge Blackwood gavelled for order. On the 4th day, it was my turn. I'd testified in depositions before, but facing Patricia in open court was different. As I took the oath, she leaned forward, trying to catch my eye with an expression that might have been pleading or calculating. I couldn't tell anymore. Prosecutor Morgan led me through the story methodically. The discovery of the foreclosure notice, the 3 years of payments, the Thanksgiving confrontation, the unraveling of Patricia's web of lies. How did these payments affect your life, Ms. Morrison? I took a breath. I lived below the poverty line despite earning 6 figures. I sold plasma twice a week to afford groceries. I missed my best friend's wedding, postponed medical procedures, and turned down a promotion that would have doubled my salary because I couldn't relocate. Why didn't you tell your parents about the payments? I thought I was helping. I thought it was temporary. I never imagined my mother was actively sabotaging my father's employment while planning to profit from our loss. Objection. Craig Walsh stood. Speculation about my client's intentions. Sustained, Judge Blackwood ruled. Stick to facts, Ms. Morrison. The cross-examination was brutal. Walsh tried to paint me as a disgruntled daughter seeking attention, questioning why I'd gone public instead of handling things privately. You started a social media campaign against your own mother, correct? I shared the truth. People drew their own conclusions. You turned family business into public entertainment. My mother turned family into a business opportunity. I simply exposed it. Patricia's face contorted at that, the mask finally cracking. Day 5 brought character witnesses. My boss testified about my work ethic and the promotion I'd declined. Dad's former colleagues shared their suspicions about his termination and Patricia's interference. Even Tyler's gaming community moderator flew in to testify about Tyler's character and Patricia's manipulation. But the most powerful testimony came from Dad himself. Earl Morrison, the man who'd been systematically broken down over 3 years, took the stand with quiet dignity. He spoke about the slow erosion of his self-worth, the job rejections he couldn't understand, the discovery that his wife of nearly 30 years had orchestrated his destruction. I blamed myself, he said, voice steady but eyes glistening. Every rejection, every failure, I internalized it. Patricia would comfort me, tell me it wasn't my fault, all while she was the one ensuring I'd fail. How do you feel about the defendant now? Morgan asked gently. Dad looked directly at Patricia for the first time in months. I pity her. She had a family who loved her, a husband who adored her, children who would have done anything for her, and she threw it all away for money and control. Patricia's attorney declined to cross-examine. On the final day of testimony, the prosecution presented one last witness, Patricia's mother, Evelyn Barrett, who'd flown in from Florida. I raised my daughters to be strong, independent women. Evelyn testified, her voice shaking with age and emotion. But somewhere along the way, Patricia confused strength with cruelty, independence with isolation. She stole from my retirement account. Told me it was for Delilah's college, but the records show it went to her hidden accounts. The elderly woman looked at her daughter with profound sadness. I don't recognize the person Patricia became. The daughter I raised wouldn't have done these things. Patricia finally broke a sob, escaping before she could stop it. But even then, I wondered if it was genuine or calculated for jury sympathy. Closing arguments were passionate on both sides. Walsh argued that Patricia was a woman overwhelmed by financial pressure, who made poor decisions but didn't deserve prison. Morgan methodically destroyed that narrative, showing pattern after pattern of deliberate cruelty and calculated fraud. This wasn't desperation, Morgan told the jury. This was predation. Patricia Morrison identified victims, including her own family, and systematically destroyed them for profit. She deserves no more mercy than she showed others. The jury deliberated for only 3 hours. As they filed back in, I held Dad's hand on one side and Tyler's on the other. Madison sat behind us, her hand on my shoulder. Has the jury reached a verdict? We have, Your Honor. On the charge of wire fraud in the first degree, how do you find? Guilty. On the charge of insurance fraud. Guilty. On the charge of identity theft. Guilty. It went on through all 12 counts. Guilty on every single charge. Patricia swayed but didn't fall. For a moment our eyes met across the courtroom. I saw no remorse, no understanding, only rage at being caught. Judge Blackwood scheduled sentencing for 2 weeks later. As Patricia was led away in handcuffs, she suddenly twisted toward our section. "You destroyed me!" she screamed. "I gave you life. I gave you everything, you ungrateful!" The bailiffs wrestled her through the door, her voice echoing down the corridor. "Well," Tyler said into the stunned silence, "that went well." Despite everything, his deadpan delivery made me laugh. Then Dad started laughing. Soon we were all in tears, the kind that come from release after unbearable tension. Outside the courthouse, media waited with cameras and questions, but I was done being the story. We slipped out a side door, leaving Patricia's conviction to speak for itself. 2 weeks later at sentencing, Patricia made one last play for sympathy. She read a statement claiming mental illness, financial desperation, and manipulation by Robert. She even suggested I'd fabricated evidence out of revenge for childhood slights. Judge Blackwood was unmoved. "Mrs. Morrison, I've presided over many fraud cases, but rarely have I seen such calculated cruelty toward one's own family. You didn't just steal money. You stole years of your daughter's life, your husband's self-worth, and your son's future. You show no genuine remorse, only regret at being caught." She paused, studying Patricia with those sharp eyes. "I sentence you to 5 years in federal prison for each count to be served concurrently, followed by 3 years supervised probation. You are ordered to pay full restitution to all victims, including the $94,000 your daughter paid in mortgage payments." Patricia's legs gave out. Her attorney had to help her to the defense table. As we left the courthouse for the final time, a reporter caught us at the door. "Delilah, any final words about your mother's sentence?" I thought for a moment, then spoke from the heart. "I hope she uses this time to understand the pain she caused. I hope she finds genuine remorse not for being caught, but for the choices she made. And I hope other families trapped in similar situations see that it's possible to break free to speak truth and to rebuild. Do you forgive her? I glanced at Dad and Tyler, my real family, the ones who'd stood by me through everything. Forgiveness isn't mine to give yet, but I'm free from her and that's enough for now. As we walked into the afternoon sun, Tyler surprised us all by linking arms with Dad and me. So, he said, who wants to help me study for my forensic accounting midterm? You're taking forensic accounting, I asked, stunned. Figured someone in this family should know how to spot fraud early. He grinned. Plus, Rachel says I have a gift for finding hidden assets. Apparently all those years of hunting for rare game items translated to real skills. Dad shook his head, smiling. My son, the forensic accountant. Never saw that coming. Hey, we're all full of surprises, Tyler said. Look at Dad. 3 consulting contracts and a teaching offer at the community college. And Delilah's heading to Beijing to run the entire Asian marketing division, Dad added proudly. We're not the family we were a year ago, I said. Thank God for that, Tyler replied. As we reached our cars, I remembered something. Oh, I never opened Mom's letter, the one she sent from jail. Want to? Dad asked gently. I pulled the envelope from my purse, staring at Patricia's handwriting. Then, without opening it, I tore it in half and dropped it in a nearby trash can. No, I said firmly. I know everything I need to know. We drove away from the courthouse, away from Patricia's shadow, toward lives she'd tried to steal but couldn't destroy. The final confrontation was over. We were free. 6 months after Patricia's sentencing, I stood in the house I'd secretly saved for 3 years, now transformed into something beautiful and wholly ours. The walls that had witnessed so much pain now displayed photos of our rebuilt family. Dad receiving his community college teaching award, Tyler at his forensic accounting certification ceremony, Madison and me at the Beijing office launch party I'd attended via video call. Can't believe you bought it at auction, Tyler said, helping me hang the last picture. Full circle, huh? It felt right, I replied. This house shouldn't suffer for what happened within its walls. The doorbell rang and Tyler went to answer it. Our Thanksgiving guests had begun arriving, not the obligatory tension-filled gatherings of the past, but a celebration of chosen family and new beginnings. Rachel came first, arms full of pie boxes. I brought extras, figured we're making up for lost celebrations. Madison followed with her new girlfriend Sophie, both carrying dishes that actually looked edible. A far cry from Madison's former cooking attempts. Don't look so shocked. Madison laughed. Sophie's been teaching me. Turns out cooking is just chemistry with better smells. Dad arrived from his basement apartment looking healthier than he had in years. Therapy and meaningful work had restored something Patricia had nearly extinguished. He'd even started dating recently, a fellow teacher named Carol who understood his journey without judgment. Need help with anything, sweetheart? He asked, the old warmth fully returned to his voice. Just be here, I said, hugging him. That's all I need. The dining room filled with laughter and conversation. Tyler entertained everyone with stories from his internship at the prosecutor's office, where Alexandra Morgan had taken him under her wing. She says I have a natural instinct for finding what people want to hide, Tyler explained. Yesterday, I found a whole cryptocurrency wallet some fraud suspect forgot to disclose. Turns out all those years of finding Easter eggs in video games translated to real detective work. Speaking of hidden things being revealed, Rachel raised her glass. I have an announcement. Thanks to the Morrison case and the media attention, I'm starting my own forensic accounting firm, specializing in financial abuse cases. Delilah Tyler. Your story has inspired dozens of families to seek help. Make that hundreds, Madison added, pulling out her phone. The Truth About Patricia website has had over 1 million unique visitors. I keep getting emails from people saying it gave them courage to confront their own toxic situations. As dinner progressed, Uncle Marcus arrived with his family. The brothers' relationship severed by Patricia's manipulations had slowly healed. Watching Dad and Marcus joke together like the old days brought tears to my eyes. "None of that," Marcus said, noticing. "This is a celebration, although—" He pulled out an envelope. "This came to my office, from Patricia's lawyer." The room went quiet. We all knew Patricia had been transferred to minimum security after 6 months of good behavior. She'd started working in the prison library, and rumors suggested she was writing a memoir, probably painting herself as the victim. "She wants to apologize," Marcus continued, "in person. The prison allows video calls now." "Absolutely not," Tyler said immediately. "She had her chance at the trial." "I agree," Madison chimed in. "Delilah doesn't owe her anything." But Dad surprised us. "Maybe we should hear what Marcus has to say. What else is in the letter?" Marcus scanned it. "Her therapist believes she's made genuine progress. Apparently she's been diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder and is actually engaging with treatment. The apology is part of her therapy." "Convenient," Tyler scoffed. "Now that she's locked up, she finds remorse." "People can change," Dad said quietly. "I'm not saying we should trust her or welcome her back, but maybe hearing her out could bring closure." "Or reopen wounds," I countered. We debated through dessert, the family divided. Finally, I made a decision. "I'll think about it," I said, "but not today. Today is about gratitude and moving forward, not looking back." The evening wound down with everyone sharing what they were thankful for. Tyler spoke about second chances and family who believed in him. Dad expressed gratitude for truth, even when it hurt. Madison gave thanks for chosen family and friends who became sisters. When my turn came, I stood looking at each face around the table. I'm thankful for the strength to speak truth even when my voice shook. For a father who survived what would break most people. For a brother who chose courage over comfort. For friends who became family when family failed us. And I paused, thinking of Patricia in her cell. I'm thankful for the lesson that love isn't obligation, trust isn't blind, and family isn't defined by blood, but by choice. As the guests began leaving, Tyler pulled me aside. "So Beijing, next month, right?" 3 weeks, actually. Nervous but excited. The apartment has a view of the Forbidden City. Going to be weird without you here. I'll visit, and you'll visit me. Besides, you're going to be busy with your new job at the prosecutor's office. True. He grinned. Who would have thought the family screw-up would end up fighting financial crime? You were never a screw-up, I said firmly. You were just stuck in Mom's narrative. We all were. Later, as I cleaned up with Dad, he brought up Patricia's letter again. You know, if you do decide to do that video call, I'd like to be there. Really, after everything. She's still the mother of my children. And I need to see for myself if she's truly changed or just playing another angle. 29 years of marriage taught me her tells, but prison might have actually affected her. And if it's just another manipulation, then we end the call and move on knowing we gave her one last chance to be human. 3 days later, I made the decision. Not for Patricia, but for my own peace of mind. The video call was scheduled for the following week, supervised by prison officials and Patricia's therapist. She appeared on screen in prison grays, looking older than her 52 years. The sharp edges that had defined her were softened, whether by time therapy or genuine reflection, I couldn't tell. Delilah, she began, then stopped seemingly at a loss. Thank you for agreeing to this. You have 10 minutes. I said, Dad's steady presence beside me giving me strength. What followed wasn't the performance I expected. Patricia spoke haltingly about her diagnosis, about understanding how her need for control had poisoned everything she touched. She didn't make excuses or blame others, She acknowledged each hurt, each manipulation, each cruel calculation. "I've been writing," she said near the end. "Not a memoir to vindicate myself, but letters to you, to Tyler, to your father. Letters I'll never send because I know words can't undo actions. But writing them helps me understand the monster I became." "Why should we believe you?" Dad asked, speaking for the first time. Patricia looked at him with something I'd never seen in her eyes, genuine regret. "You shouldn't. I wouldn't. All I can say is that losing everything I schemed for taught me the value of what I threw away. I don't expect forgiveness. I just needed you to know that I finally understand what I did." The call ended with no promises of reconciliation, no tearful reunions. But something had shifted. The woman on the screen wasn't the mother who'd terrorized us. Whether she could maintain this change remained to be seen. A month later, I stood in Beijing International Airport starting my new chapter. The promotion I'd once refused had become the opportunity of a lifetime. My team welcomed me warmly excited about the fresh perspective I'd bring. Tyler called during my first week bursting with news. I testified in my first big case. We nailed a guy who'd been scamming elderly people out of their retirement savings. Alexandra says I'm a natural. Proud of you, little brother. Also, Dad's got news. Want me to patch him in? Soon it was a three-way call, our new tradition, despite the time zones. "Carol and I are making it official," Dad announced, joy evident in his voice. "Nothing fancy, just a small ceremony next spring. You'll both be there, right?" "Wouldn't miss it," I assured him. "Tyler, you planning to bring anyone?" "Actually," Tyler cleared his throat. "There's this girl in my forensic accounting class, Sarah. We've been studying together." "Studying," Dad and I said in unison, laughing at Tyler's protests. These calls became our lifeline, weekly check-ins that kept us connected across continents. Tyler shared his cases, Dad his teaching victories and wedding plans, and I my adventures in international marketing. 6 months into my Beijing assignment, I received an unexpected package. Inside was a leather journal and a note from the prison chaplain. Patricia had completed her memoir. Not the vindictive tell-all everyone expected, but a cautionary tale about losing yourself to greed and control. She donated any proceeds to a financial abuse victims fund. The dedication read, "To Delilah, Tyler, and Earl. You deserved better. This is my acknowledgement of that truth." I didn't read it immediately, but eventually curiosity won. The book was brutal in its self-assessment, acknowledging every manipulation without excuse. Whether it represented genuine change or sophisticated image management, I couldn't say, but it didn't matter anymore. We'd moved beyond needing her validation or remorse. On the anniversary of that fateful Thanksgiving, our family held another gathering. Dad and Carol hosted in their new condo. Tyler brought Sarah, who was definitely more than a study partner, and I attended via video from Beijing, where it was already the next morning. A toast. Dad proposed raising his glass to the laptop screen where my face beamed back. To family. The kind you choose, the kind you build, and the kind you save. To truth even when it hurts. To second chances and new beginnings. To breaking cycles, Tyler added. To freedom, I concluded. As we toasted across continents and time zones, I thought about how far we'd come. The house saved from foreclosure now sheltered Dad's new beginning. The son written off as a gaming addict was becoming a champion for fraud victims. The father who'd lost himself had found purpose in teaching others. And me, I'd learned that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to enable someone's destruction, even when that someone is your mother. My phone buzzed with a message from a viewer of Tyler's original TikTok. Your story gave me courage to confront my financially abusive parents. Today I'm free. Thank you. I screenshotted it to share with Tyler later. These messages came regularly now, strangers finding strength in our story. Patricia had tried to destroy us, but instead she'd inadvertently created something powerful, proof that toxic cycles could be broken, that truth could triumph, that families could be rebuilt on foundations of mutual respect rather than obligation. The Beijing skyline glittered outside my apartment window, full of possibility. In Denver, Dad was starting his new life. Tyler was building his career. We were scattered but more united than we'd ever been under Patricia's roof. The woman who'd screamed, "Get out and never come back," had given us an unintended gift. By pushing us out, she'd freed us to discover who we really were. And who we were: survivors, truth-tellers, family. The real kind. As my video call ended and their celebration continued, I opened my laptop to work on a project proposal. But first, I typed a quick message to the support group Madison had connected me with. For those just starting their journey, it gets better. The guilt fades, the freedom grows. You deserve peace even if it means walking away from those who birthed you but never truly loved you. Family isn't about blood. It's about who shows up, who stays, who celebrates your growth rather than resenting it. Keep going. We're proof that there's beautiful life on the other side of toxic family relationships. I hit send, then turned to my work building my future 3 years after my mother tried to destroy it. She'd yelled at me to get out and never come back. It was the best thing she ever did for me. If this story resonated with you, if you've faced financial abuse or toxic family relationships, know that you're not alone. Have you ever had to choose between enabling someone's destructive behavior and protecting your own well-being? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If this video helped you feel less isolated in your struggles, please hit that like button. It helps other people find stories that might give them courage too. Subscribe to our channel for more real-life stories of triumph over adversity, and share this video with someone who might need to hear that it's okay to prioritize their own financial and emotional health. Thank you for joining Delilah's journey. Remember, sometimes the greatest act of love is refusing to enable someone's self-destruction. You deserve a life free from manipulation, and it's never too late to start building it. Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other.